you everyone who are joining us today for our PAC meeting 4B. This is our PAC meeting on the proposed early actions projects that we have identified through our Pell study process. Just a reminder, there will be a lot of information that we provide today, but feel free to send any questions or comments that you may have in the chat that is available to you throughout this meeting, as well as, raise your hand at any time if you have a question or need further clarification. There will be times throughout this presentation where we will pause and there'll be a moment to answer any of your questions on any of the projects that we are presenting today. And, as always, our website is open 24 hours, 7 days a week. So if you do have anything that comes to mind, you can send a comment or question through that process, or also you can email anyone on the project team directly, and we will get back to you as soon as possible with a answer. So let's get started. As I mentioned today, just wanted to give a welcome back. It's been a while since we've all seen each other. So again, thank you all for being engaged in this process. So far, we've gotten a lot of feedback that's been very valuable. So again, thank you for your volunteer time. We'll go through our PAC milestones, kind of identify what has been going on. Since the last time we've met, we have had 2 public information meetings so far, and that has generated a lot of great feedback and input. Then we'll get into our proposed early action projects. David will provide you all with a high-level overview of those projects and the intended outcomes of those. And then at the conclusion, we'll have another question and answer session to capture any other outstanding comments and go through some next steps. So since our last meeting, we've been receiving input from PAC members as well as members of the public. You have been checking your email for any information that you've received from myself or any other member of the project team. We have been obtaining that input from PAC members, stakeholders, members of the public. We did have that agency coordination meeting, and we got a lot of great feedback and perspective from everyone who was able to provide input. With that input, we have been refining our Pell vision statement, our preliminary purpose and need and goals and objectives. We will go through some of those revisions in the next couple of slides. And again, with all of those feedback and perspective that we've been getting, we've also been refining our level 2 evaluation criteria, which will be in the next milestone. And with that, I will hand it over to John to just give some perspective of our revisions.
Great, thanks, Naomi. So if some of you were on the our last public informational meeting, you may have seen us preview this. And again, if you were on that call, we really appreciate everybody's continued involvement in this study. But we have, as Naomi mentioned, revised our vision statement to incorporate a lot of feedback that we've gotten from our stakeholders, from some of those PAC members. And I'm gonna read it right off the slide, just because it is important. And so it reads as follows. Connecticut DOT desires to establish a vision or master plan for the interchange that addresses and balances the regional importance of the Mixmaster for commuter traffic and motor freight users, while also improving multimodal services, local connections, and livability within the city of Waterbury to enhance and support social equity and economic vitality. And along with this change to the vision statement, we're also working on some revisions to our purpose and need statement to add in some of these elements, such as community connectivity, multimodal aspects, and mobility equity. So, we really appreciate all the input that we've gotten, and we will be making changes as a result. And you'll be seeing those in the coming months. So I will turn it back over to Naomi. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Just to give another, high-level overview of our process. Right now, we are in the Pell study phase. That's anticipated to go through until 2023. And again, during this phase, we are linking our transportation planning process with the environmental and community concerns that you all have been engaged in and providing input and perspective on. At the end of this process, we'll have a range of reasonable alternatives. We also call these Pell recommendations. And that range of reasonable alternatives will go through the next step, which is our NEPA process, the National Environmental Policy Act process. That's where we will develop an environmental document, a lot more of that coordination and more detailed coordination with the federal agencies, and identifying impacts and mitigation more directly will occur. Through that process, we will identify a preferred alternative. That is about 2 to 4 years. After we identify that preferred alternative, then we can get into the design and permitting process. That's where we have advanced design, and of the preferred alternative, we procure those state and federal permits, and that's about a 4 to 6 year process for the long-term project. And then finally, construction that is anticipated to be completed in 2045. The construction, as we've mentioned before, is we have broken them down into phases, and we'll explain that again in the next couple of slides. But that construction, as I mentioned, is anticipated to be completed in 2045, and that would be for the long-term project for the new mixed. And again, I do want to stress that public involvement will occur throughout all phases. We are just now in this very early Pell study process, but each step of these phases will include and incorporate public involvement, public information meetings, where members of the public will be able to provide additional input and perspective of the preferred alternative or the design and other aspects of the project whenever it's identified. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jake.
All right, thanks, Naomi. Let me jump to the next slide. So we're going to be talking about today mainly the proposed early action projects. These are the enabling type of projects that will help improve local connectivity, improve traffic conditions on not only the local roadway network, but as well as the highway network. They're independent type projects that we've identified, and I'll explain how we came up with those, that we can initiate and start these projects well in advance of that timeline, that long-term timeline of the full replacement. It's going to help enable, as I said, these are enabling projects, but propel these, propel and make the full construction easier. And again, just as a reminder, what we're talking about amongst all these three is the near-term projects become those projects that we can do in advance, but the NEPA process has to be completed before we can move those forward into construction. And obviously, the long-term project is a full-blown replacement of the full interchange system. So if we want to run to the next slide, let's talk about how we arrived at or came up with the opportunities for these standalone early action type projects. So again, we looked at the entire network. We looked at the entire study network. We evaluated the traffic. We saw that the traffic was jumping on and off the highway. 35% of the volumes were jumping on and off the highway, not exactly the way the system was originally designed for. But we also looked at the roadway network, the local roadway network, and the arterials leading in and out of the highway as well. So they created this hotspot map. And you can see from the legend on the side that color-coded in green meant that things were functioning well. Now, if they were that dark red, functioning at a level of service of F or E, anything in red or orange were areas of concern, areas that we felt we could make improvements. So we started looking at the potential solutions and the value that these would bring to the overall interchange and a way to propel the project forward and help enable the long-term reconstruction of the interchange. So if we run to the next slide, we broke them into 3 categories: the local intersection improvements, the interchange improvements, and the main line improvements that we saw as great opportunities as standalone projects that could be incorporated, some as early as today, but they're all in a very short, a near-term time frame. We don't have to wait for NEPA to be completed. They're good standalone projects, and we can move forward with these. So David's going to walk you through these and a little bit of detail about each one. So I'll turn it over to David Schweitzer.
Thank you, Jake. All right, the first one we're going to talk about, well, actually, the first 2 that we're going to talk about actually are getting included within the rehab project. And the first one we're going to talk about is ML5. This is a mainline improvement that happened to be numbered number 5. And this is one that I believe Ken had brought up at a previous PAC meeting and we started to discuss. And this is an auxiliary lane on I-84 westbound from the exit 22 on-ramp to the exit 21 off-ramp. So if we slide to, now when we're on this slide, you can see that the exit 22 on-ramp is to the right side of our screen, while on the left side is the exit 21 off-ramp. I-84 westbound is on the upper half of our slide, while eastbound is on the lower half. That area shown in yellow is area that we'll be looking to reconstruct to put in this lane that is coming on in westbound. How this was originally constructed here, when 84 was built, there was a break point in the construction here so that there used to be an on-ramp from South Elm Street that came on to 84 westbound. And then the project was further extended to the east as it was built further out. So what we'd be looking to do is then recapture with a little bit more of a strip paving through here so that we get the full auxiliary lane, because what we're identifying as a problem here is that weave, merge, and diverge congests the traffic here and can slow things up in these peak hours. So the solution is we'd construct that auxiliary lane, and what that will give us is that's going to help improve our traffic operations. We're going to improve our air quality because we will reduce the congestion. We'll improve safety because we'll reduce the crash rate. It's a low impact solution. And we look to include this within the rehab project because it was an effective and efficient way to get this project built for the immediate effects that it could show. Seeing, we had such a large contractor on site, and this is within the area of the rehab project. So if we just switch to the next slide, this is just showing what those existing traffic conditions are. And here again are those colors that Jake was talking about. Now, anything from level of service D and above, A to D, is considered acceptable. Areas below that, E and F, are areas that you want to improve. And what we were seeing was that the merge condition from exit 22, that's a heavy use on-ramp, is showing us a level service E. But now with these improvements, by extending that auxiliary lane, we're moving this whole stretch up into a level of service C. So that was the goal of this project, was to help reduce that congestion along I-84 westbound. So are there any questions or comments on this proposed early action? All right. The next one is what we called IC5, or interchange improvement number 5. And this one also is going to go into the ongoing rehab project, and I'll explain why in a minute. But this is the Route 8 northbound exit 32 off ramp at its intersection with Riverside Street northbound. Now, as the rehab project has been going on, the temporary bypass for Route 8 northbound, when it crossed the Naugatuck River and then came back, it actually got within the footprint of Riverside Street northbound before it came back up and re-intersected with Route 8 northbound after crossing Freight Street. So we had to close the exit 32 off-ramp for the last several years. So this was scheduled to be reconstructed by the contractor once Route 8 northbound was reopened. So that's the stage that we are at. But what our traffic analysis was showing us here, when we looked at this, is that we had a high crash location and that there were deficient traffic operations that would actually affect West Main Street. So if you look at the top picture, you can see how tight this gore area is to the existing Freight Street intersection. So what is happening is that vehicles that are exiting off of exit 32, they are in a yield condition while Riverside Street northbound is in a free flow condition. So somebody getting off the exit ramp then has to maneuver hard in order to, in this short distance, get to the far right lane in order to turn onto Freight Street. And this is evident when you look at the bottom picture where you can see these cars already starting to move across the gore area in order to be able to start moving over to that far right lane. So the solution we are looking at here is, now there are already traffic signals that are installed at the intersections of Freight Street with Riverside Street, both northbound and southbound. And those signals are being replaced with the rehab project with a new controller and all new equipment. So what we are looking to do then is get a third signal installed. They'll be run off the same controller and will be synchronized with them at the intersection of the off-ramp with Riverside Street northbound. So then these vehicles that are exiting from Route 8 northbound will be able to make get into the lane that they want to get into and make the maneuvers that they want, rather than being trapped and forced to head further north up to West Main Street, which is already a very heavy trafficked arterial within the city. So what we're going to do then, what our outcomes will be, is we're going to relieve that pressure on West Main Street. We're going to take some of it off. We're going to improve our traffic operations here in this area. Again, when we reduce congestion, we're improving our air quality. When we reduce the crash rates, we're improving safety. This is also a low impact solution. We did not want to have the rehab contractor finish his work. We identify this problem, come back 4 years later and start to tear the same intersection up. So we wanted to get that work done now within the rehab project. Now, the rehab contractor, he's also going to be reconstructing all these sidewalks and crosswalks throughout this area. So, so that is the recap on this IC5 project. Any questions or comments, feedback on this one? All right. Now, those previous two were projects that have been realized, initiated, and moved forward with the rehab project. These next four are ones that are going to, we are in the report or study phase of these, and then they are going to follow the CONDOT process. So if we go to the next one, meaning that these will be looked at, they will follow that whole CONDOT process, and there will be other opportunities where there will be public meetings so that these can be commented on in the future. So the first one we're going to look at is LC, a local intersection improvement, which is at West Main Street and Highland Avenue. As we had mentioned previously, I mean, West Main Street is a heavy arterial with traffic in Waterbury. Sits on the north end. The arterial we've spoken about previously. We have 4 crossings of the Naugatuck River between Washington, Bank, Freight, and West Main Street. But West Main Street is the only one that continues in an east-west direction and climbs that ridge line on the west side, which is where we're looking right now. So if we look at the intersection with Highland Avenue, now Highland Avenue comes down, and Highland Avenue is at a stop condition at this T intersection, while West Main Street is in a free flow condition. Now, a lot of these pavement markings are faded here. The crosswalks are faded. So what we do is we have a high crash location. People aren't sure where they should be. We also have poor intersection sight distance. So the solution here is we look to install a new traffic signal. They'll be coordinated with others through this West Main Street corridor. So as you can see right off to the right edge of our screen, this is right where the intersection with southbound Watertown Avenue and southbound Riverside Street is. So what we look to do is install that new traffic signal here, restripe our approaches so we get some of those dedicated turn and through lanes. And then with that signal, they'll be coordinated We're also going to be able to then have protected pedestrian phases, so people will have a good chance to cross West Main Street and Highland in a protected crosswalk. And we'll refurbish a lot or rebuild a lot of these sidewalks, and then also extend them further south to fill in a few missing gaps that are out there. So again, what this will do is going to help improve traffic operations. Again, improve air quality by reducing congestion. It's going to improve safety by reducing that crash rate. This one here, this is going to improve connectivity and non-motorized mobility, because we'll then have those protected pedestrian phases. And again, this is viewed as a low impact solution. Any questions or comments on this proposed early action? All right, we'll move to the next one. Our next one is another local intersection improvement. And this is at the intersection of Chase Parkway and Sunnyside, where it transitions to Sunnyside Avenue at its intersection with Highland Avenue. So if we zoom in on this, this kind of sits in the southwest quadrant away from the core of the interchange. Well, the core of the interchange is right there, but it's to the southwest side of it. There are a lot of on and off ramps coming from I-84 in the immediate vicinity here. And then we have this intersection, this four-way intersection that sits, just off from this. So what we'd be looking to do is that this is identified as an area where there's moderate congestion, but it is a high crash location. As you can see, pavement markings are somewhat faded. There is an existing traffic signal out there. The Chase Park is off to the up and to the right here. And then we also do have the high schools and other schools that sit down to the south and west from here. So what we look to do here is we look to restripe these approaches so that we can get those dedicated left turn lanes at the intersection to help with that safety and the congestion that's there. We'd also look to optimize the timing of the signal, and then we'd have to look at some minor strip widening along Highland Avenue to the south in order to accommodate this. And again, what are intended outcomes? We're going to improve the traffic operations. We're going to improve our air quality by reducing congestion. We're going to improve safety by reducing the crash rate. And again, we're going to improve that connectivity and the non-motorized mobility with this project. So are there any questions, comments?
Dave, it's Bob in Waterbury.
Yep.
A question. I think that's a great improvement, but a little further down Chase Parkway, heading west, there's the on-ramp to eastbound 84. And on Chase Parkway, the traffic backs up, particularly during school time, where people continuing through on Chase Avenue can't, they're blocked. And I'm wondering, yeah, right where the green circle is there, if there was consideration given to an exclusive left turn so as to allow through traffic on Chase to bypass. The blockage is considerable.
Yeah, this is an area that has been brought forward to us, and it was identified. It's not part of the presentation today, but it is one that is being looked at as a possible proposed early action.
Okay, great.
All right, we'll move forward. The next two are a little complex, so if something comes up or you got a question, just don't be afraid to interrupt me. Be glad to answer your question. This one is an interchange improvement. Again, this is at Watertown Avenue, West Main Street, and Robbins Street, along, in the northern part of the city here. So as we zoom in, this actually came out of looking at the intersections of West Main Street, where the one-way pairs of Riverside and Watertown, their names changed. but their intersections at West Main Street really cause a lot of congestion along West Main Street. So in order to improve that traffic flow, we were looking at what could be done at those intersections to, to help improve that traffic flow and improve, the other conditions that we've been looking at. And what we were identifying as, just to orient everybody as we turned in on this, because we rotated. So now north is directly off to our left. So that's Route 8 that kind of cuts through the slide here. West Main Street is running up and down on the right side. And then that's Route 73 heading to Watertown. That's up in the upper left-hand corner. And then Watertown Avenue is coming across through the middle there. Yeah. So what this really identified when we really looked in at this problem is we had high crash locations and we had the deficient traffic operations at West Main Street. And that was at the, a lot of this was at the intersection with southbound Watertown Avenue, where the exit 34 off-ramp, the existing exit 34 off-ramp came off. So what this was providing, what this existing condition did is that gave us two southbound approaches to our intersection. So our traffic signal had to control both of those phases separately. They couldn't go at the same time. So that really slowed the timing of the intersection and, led to a lot of congestion there. So, and then just looking at some of the other factors as we came through here, also that intersection with Robin Street and Watertown was also a bit of a concern. Just because we thought it can be configured a little bit better, because as Watertown Avenue northbound, as it transitioned from Riverside Street northbound, is on the east side of Route 8. It carries further up and then it crosses over under that underneath Route 8 before it reconnects, and Watertown Avenue becomes bidirectional as it heads further north. So what the solutions that we were looking at, it really came down to is that we wanted to move the exit ramp from Route 8 southbound, the exit 34 off ramp. We wanted to move that from the West Main intersection, moving it back to the Robin Street intersection. So what needed to be accomplished with this then is we would need to remove the Watertown Avenue northbound as a separate separate roadway. We need to bring that underneath West Main Street and then make that section of Watertown Avenue between West Main Street and Robin Street. We'd need to make that bidirectional. So then we'd have a four-way intersection there at Watertown Avenue and Robbins, along with the exit 34 off-ramp. And then we'd have a simpler intersection with West Main Street and Watertown Avenue. Any questions on that?
And signalized?
Oh, definitely, Bob. Yeah, both of those would be signalized. Sorry, I didn't get there yet. Yep, new coordinated signals even. So thank you. All right. So then what we'd be looking at is we'd improve our traffic operations. We'd improve our air quality by reducing congestion, especially along West Main Street. That's going to help that area flow better. It improves safety because it reduces that crash rate. And then also with that signal timing and some of the new sidewalks that we're putting in there, it helps improve that connectivity and mobility with the non-motorized users. So I'll pause again here to see if there are any further questions on this one. All right. We'll go to this last one. And this last one, I know people have heard this talked about. And this is the elimination of I-84 eastbound exit 21 off-ramp. And that off-ramp has been temporarily closed for quite a while now. And we're actually looking at the possible elimination of this in the future. And that's part of what this proposed early action project is about. But I want to get through the whole thing, because this really isn't just about I-84 eastbound. That's where this started. But then this really got down into what else can be done if we're going to be moving that traffic over to exit 22, what takes place down at the local level, and not just as far as traffic goes, but then what are the other opportunities as far as urban design also. So this is a multi-level early action project as we get through this. So first, to just give a little background on this, what we did is we had a bridge that was in poor condition, and that's the exit 21 bridge. That's that hook there. It was due for a rehab, but we were going to have it closed due to the construction on the rehab project. So then it started, as we started looking at this further, you realize that we have very poor distances for the merges, weaves, and diverges, because we have that Route 8 northbound on-ramp, the system movement, which is a heavy movement coming on. And then we have that short auxiliary lane, which is only providing like 350 feet for these merges, weaves, and diverges here. Exit 22 is sitting in an additional 700 feet to the east. And then if we look to the far left of our screen along I-84 eastbound, you can just see we have the 2 through lanes of I-84 eastbound that come on there. Then we have that additional left lane add, which is the Route 8 southbound traffic. And those people will also try to merge across to get to either exit 21 or 22. It's signed as an illegal movement, but the movement is still made. So what we were looking at then was we had the poor distances for merges, weaves, and diverges. We have deficient traffic operations. We have high crash location, and we have a lot of congestion here, especially up on the main line. So as we go to this next one, and this is a VISM model, and before Naomi starts to run this model, one thing that I want to point out to everybody here is that in the upper left corner, you'll see 2031 is when this is the date for when this traffic is. Now, we have the existing, and we do know that we get a lot of congestion in the existing traffic as it sits today. Our traffic was pushed out to our design year of 2045, and at that time we had a very dark red here on I-84. But by 2045, we're supposed to we want to have this interchange replaced. So we're looking at, all right, so if we're not in very good shape now and we're having all these problems, and in 2045 we're a hard fail, where is that year in between where we're going to really experience problems that, the city, the community, the commuters, the region, where everybody could start to see the benefit of this project? So as we ran our analysis and then worked through with the models, we realized that 2031 was really the year we'd start to see where there were issues. So that's how we arrived at that year for our analysis. So as Naomi runs this model, you see a bunch of, these are all representing vehicles. And as they're trying, these squares and colored rectangles, as they're trying to make these maneuvers, and as a vehicle looks to make a maneuver, and this is going to zoom in tighter, you can start to see how they're shifting lanes. It starts to back traffic up, and you can start to see how 84 eastbound, even off to the left of the screen, was starting to push off and get congested. And then it carries forward as it comes through as people are making these choices. So while we go forward, so the thing that we looked at then was we looked at, all right, if we eliminate exit 21 and we force people to exit 22, and they need to travel on the local grid network, on the local roadway network, how long is it going to take them to reach the destinations that they wanted to reach? Because if you look at, and what we've highlighted here is the train station. So if we were to get off of exit 21 in a no build condition, we're looking at that travel time on the local roads of, this is showing a couple minutes. If we were to get off of exit 22 and try to get over to the train station, if we head to the north and come across Grand, we're looking at traveling basically 3 minutes. So where is this time savings? So what we needed to do then is to look at I-84 eastbound, and we go from a common starting point. In this case, we picked, exit 20. So you look at, then you start to add in your travel time along I-84, your travel time on the exit ramp, and then your travel time on the local roads, versus if we eliminate exit 21 and take you to exit 22, then you start to look at your travel times, and then you total up your cumulative times. You can see about a 2.5 minute savings in the travel time of the vehicle, that with these improvements in I-84, with less traffic and less congestion up there, that you're actually having a savings of 2.5 minutes. And you can look at this and say, all right, well, if that's just people traveling to the north, what if somebody wanted to turn to the south? So then what we did is we kind of ran this in reverse going that way. I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but you can see the numbers here on the side, and there's still a 2 minutes of savings in your travel time by doing that with the elimination of exit 21. So are there any questions on that? I'll stop right here, just see if there are any questions.
Yeah, is there a Home Depot type rep on this thing? Because I'm a consumer, and boy, it's hard to even get there.
And that was Brian, that's a good question. And we did the same analysis was done in getting to Home Depot. It was just for this presentation, we used the train station, but it was falling out to the same similar consequences. May not have the same gap, but the amount of time that you are on I-84 would be very consistent. So you'd still be looking at an additional 3.5 minutes that you'd be stuck on 84, getting, before you got off and were able to make that travel time.
Hey, David, I do have some of those slides in the back if we did want to run through them really quickly to Home Depot.
Brian, if it's that important to you, or do you want me to finish this? And if we have time at the end, we can then jump to the Home Depot.
Oh, no, that's fine. I don't represent them, but I was wondering,
Yeah, no, and it wasn't just, Home Depot. We looked at, 4 or 5 destinations when we went through that study, picking major points. All right, but getting back into this then, knowing that people could travel going to the north or going to the south. Now you can go to the next slide, Naomi, thank you. We looked at that as being our area. So we'd go from Meadow and Bank on the west side to Grand on the north, to South Main on the east, and to Liberty in the south. And we looked at those intersections and how they rated today in the no build condition. And then we looked at what their level of service would be, or what their proposed condition would be in 2045 in the proposed condition. And the only one that was failing on the left side is the South Main Street Grand Street intersection. And here in the future, but that is currently undergoing through a CMAQ project, which is clean. It deals with air quality as to why that why that traffic signal is being replaced today in a current project. And I think the bids just came out, is what I was told. So that project's going to be taking place very shortly. So within this area then are these 9, there are 9 signalized intersections that weren't covered by that other project. And with those other 9, we'd be looking to replace those traffic signals and make other improvements at those intersections. And what that would come down to, and I'm just showing here, this is an example, the South Main and West Clay, just so we can go what those intersection improvement details would be. And again, it'd be new traffic signals, it'd be signal phasing and timing improvements. Some of them may get new lane striping or new dedicated lanes as we went through. There may be some, definitely new pavement markings. And then quite a few of these would get LPIs, which is a leading pedestrian interval, which really is gives a pedestrian a bit of a head start into the crosswalk to help them cross a street in a protected fashion. So that takes us down to the improvements we want to make at these intersections on the local level. But then what we also looked at then was urban design opportunities. And this will be at all of these intersections along that path that we talked about, you know, the Meadow to Bank, Liberty to Grand, and South Main to the east. But what we would just want to show here is an example here is along South Main, because we had 3 good examples of what can take place. One, and that's shown in the light blue, is our underpass improvements. Then in the green is more of a commercial type roadway. And then we also looked at this 3rd section, which was a little bit more of small business residential type area, where we could also do roadway improvements. So jumping first to the underpass improvements, if you look at that existing underpass with South Main, it's dark, it's not very inviting. So one of the first things we look to do is we look to improve the lighting there. We combine with other safe routes tactics and get something that's more inviting and more welcoming for the pedestrians to utilize this underpass. The next one that we're looking at, and this is a section between McMahon Street heading south to Clay Street. So this is a very wide swath of pavement. It's 45 feet curb to curb. There currently is, if you look at the picture, there's currently parking along the west edge, even though it's signed that there shouldn't be parking here. And this is in front of those condos. So what we look to do here is, with our section, we look to maintain those nice sidewalks that we have, those nice 7-foot wide sidewalks. We look to formalize that parking on the west side. And then we look to structure those lanes. So as we're shown just with the yellow stripe, they're presently separating the northbound, southbound. We look to get that so that we have the 3 lanes as needed, because we'd have turn lanes at both of those signals coming at either end of this. The next section, which is the one further to the south, which is from Clay heading south towards Liberty. This is more in the residential small business area, a much narrower street. This is reduced in width to 34 feet. And then if you look at what our section looks like, we have informal parking on both sides of the street, leaving a narrower travel lanes through the center. So if you start to look at the picture, you can start to see how with that parking on both sides, cars are crowding that yellow center line to get through. So what our proposed improvements here would be, maintain those sidewalks that we have, the 8 and 10 foot wide sidewalks. We'd formalize the parking on one side of the roadway. We'd get 2 travel lanes through here, and then provide a buffer on one of the other sides. So those are just some of the urban design opportunities. And we just showed South Main, but we look to carry it throughout that whole grid as we went through. So then just to summarize this project, all right, we have a bridge that's in poor condition. We have very substandard distances for ramp merges, weaves, and diverges on I-84 eastbound. We're showing that we have deficient traffic operations. We have high crash locations. We have recurring congestion, and that's even more highlighted once we showed those travel time and we did that analysis. You can really start to see how that congestion is there. So what part of these solutions would be is we'd have the demolition of that existing exit 21 bridge, open up a little bit more space in there, and there's been talks, possible a possible commuter parking lot or other sort of overflow parking, or there are other ideas that could take place in that open area. We look at new traffic control signals at 9 of the intersections throughout this grid. We've had signal phasing and timing improvements. There'd be other local roadway improvements. So then our intended outcomes, again, improve our traffic operations, improve that air quality by reducing congestion, improve the safety by reducing crash rates. We'd improve that connectivity, the non-motorized mobility. We do a lot to improve that. And then we have a lot of urban design opportunities here, which would hit way down, get us down at the local level. Any questions or comments? Those last two has thrown a lot of information at you, so. All right, led to our next slide. And again, like I said, I mean, those first two projects that we talked about, those are within the rehab project. All right, so those are going to be under construction. These last four that we talked about, these are in the study phase. Reports are being produced on these, and then they'll be advanced through the CONDOT project process, which means that we'll have other public meetings on these. There will be a lot of other opportunities for the public to get engaged and ask their questions on those projects. But what we're looking to do is seeing those projects are, we've initiated those projects so that, we're getting close to getting into the environmental studies after our reports are done, so that these projects can be designed and put out in the street and look to be constructed, later in the 20s and into the early 30s. I think our next slide here is just showing a recap. These are the 6 that we talked about today. Bob mentioned another one that we've been alerted to, and we'll take another harder look at, see where that is within our early action projects. And again, the 2 here, IC5, that interchange improvement, and ML5, that mainline improvement, those are under construction with the rehab project. I don't know if anybody has any further questions, comments, feedback. All right. I guess we'll be pushing along, Naomi. I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. So next steps. Today's meeting was a little bit, out of our normal Pell study process as we were going through our early action projects that can be mobilized a little bit more quickly, and they're standalone from our new mixed project. So they will have a separate, as David mentioned, a separate NEPA and design process from this new mixed study, where anyone can provide input through whenever those projects get mobilized. Here we are, our very trusty Pell process funnel. I just want to provide, another overview of this process that we are going through in order to identify that that range of reasonable alternatives, or those Pell recommendations. Each alternative that we've gone through with through the universe will be screened based on our goals and objectives and purpose and needs and other guiding principles that we have developed. Last meeting for A, we went through our proposed level 1 screening results through the fatal flaw identification to determine which alternatives do not meet the needs of our community and transportation system. This next meeting, PAC 4C, will present the evaluation criteria for the alternatives that had advanced from level 1. We'll be evaluating the alternatives based on their ability to meet those intended outcomes of the project. We'll have more details available. We'll be able to assess the alternatives' ability to meet those goals and objectives that we have been developing in conjunction with you all and members of the public and other stakeholders. Those intended outcomes or desired outcomes are, enhanced riverfront access, complete streets, increasing connectivity. We're looking at those urban design opportunities and really want to leverage those and push those forward in our process, identifying those alternatives that provide more of those goals and objectives that we have incorporated into our design and into our process. Also includes, environmental and transit needs and mobility needs as well. I do want to highlight that our design approach, does look at our state and federal regulations and supplemented by those guiding principles that we have gone through before, as well as the input that you all have been provided. We are trying to identify those alternatives that preserve the economic, scenic, and aesthetic, historical and natural resource values that exist within Waterbury, we are being attentive to the design to minimize impacts to sensitive populations. We know we have environmental justice populations and other sensitive populations within the area. We're looking to not adversely impact, those local, regional, statewide plans as well. All those aspects that are being taken into consideration as we are developing our designs and conceptual designs. And last meeting, we kind of identified those different alignments and those potential solutions. And we can now use that criteria to weed out and whittle down those alternatives that do not provide those desired and intended outcomes that we have identified. So next meeting, we'll get into more details and specifics on those evaluation criteria, and you all will be able to provide input and feedback and on that so that we can incorporate that into our study, into this next steps of the process. I do want to pause here for a quick second before we go into the upcoming meetings, just if there are any questions on this process. Okay. So our next meeting, PAC Meeting 4C, on the level 2 screening criteria and measures, we are anticipating that to be late October, early November. We are still, refining a lot of those early Pell documents that you all have provided input on. And so those refinements will help us to develop criteria for the level 2 screening. The next public information meeting, number 3, is anticipated early December. The public is a little bit behind the PAC, as the PAC is informing our process and informing how we approach the public with the information. And we also incorporate refinements before we go to the public. And so the public is going to get a presentation on our proposed level 1 screening results in early December. And then we are anticipating to initiate our 5th milestone in January 2023. That will have our proposed results of the level 2 screening, and you all as members of the PACs will be able to provide input on that as well. With that, before our next meeting, do continue to look through the information that we have gone through today and at our last meeting for I do want to mention that on our website, we do have a survey that's open until the end of September on this project. And we also have the project's alternatives webpage available where you can provide comments on each individual alternative in the universe of alternatives. Feel free to go through that and peruse that webpage as well. Check your email for information about scheduling for our next meeting. You'll be hearing from me in the next couple of weeks, and we hope that you remain engaged and excited to participate in our next meeting. I think this next meeting will be a very exciting and important one. So again, thank you all for staying engaged and participating in this process. And with that, I'll do one last round of questions and comments and answers to gain any, to try to answer any questions that you all may have from the information that we've gone through today. Before I close up, I do want to mention that we are doing community meetings around Waterbury and doing tabling events as well. So you may see us at some events around the city, and feel free to come out and say hello, and even request a meeting for your organization as well if you have additional questions or would like, a more detailed presentation on some of the aspects that we've been going through in our Pell study process so far. I do not see any hands raised or comments in the chat. So
I just wanted to add
Yep.
a couple of comments, Naomi. Just want to thank the team for going through all those early actions, and just to let everyone know that, we are considering other locations, within the study area to see if there are other early actions that could provide that near-term benefit. That's the whole intent of those early actions are. So, and if there are any other suggestions, recommendations, feel free to reach out to the team as we continue to evaluate these. I just wanted to throw that in there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Naomi, did we want to circle back to that Home Depot slide for Brian?
Oh, yeah, we absolutely can.
Get time.
Yeah, we do have time. I will pull that up. Let's see here.
Yeah, and while you're pulling that up, Naomi, one thing I did want to mention, and that is along South Main Street, there's going to be an ongoing paving, milling and paving project that's ongoing. So there'll be a lot of new pavement markings out there now. You know, so shouldn't get confused too much with this. That's not what we're doing now. That's a ongoing maintenance project that'll be on, you know, taking place, and that'll be
So I believe this is the travel time slide. This shows the AM, the morning peak hour total travel times between the no build with exit 21 remaining open and ML1 being incorporated with, which means exit 22 being the exit that remains for getting to Home Depot.
yeah, and I believe with the AM peak on eastbound is all was higher. You know, we thought that was more of a time when people be heading to Home Depot, so that's why this was used. And there's a longer travel time on I-84 at that time period. So.
And just to reiterate, I think Dave, you mentioned it in terms of the process as we move this specific proposal forward. We will be meeting with the city. We want to reach out to some of those stakeholders in that immediate area, especially along South Main Street. So we'll be doing a pretty extensive outreach to get everybody informed as we go through the process.
Yeah, no, exactly, Neil. I mean, this is one of the four that we were talking about. It's going to follow that CONDOT project process going forward. So you would know very well the process. So.
Okay. I don't see any other questions or comments or raised hands in the chat. So I think that we can adjourn a little early, and I do want to, you know, thank everyone for joining us today. Did think this was a really good presentation, and wanted to make sure that you all had this information out so you can see the those enabling projects that we've identified that can, you know, have immediate benefits to those of you in the community, and using this interchange daily and commuting and for your day-to-day traveling. So thanks again, and you'll be hearing from me in the near future on our next meetings, and with that we can end the meeting. So thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.